Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Tyson-Shu. I'm one of the estate planning and probate attorneys at Beresford Booth, and thank you for your time being here this afternoon to, go through the topic related to estate planning and probate, which is we're going to talk about beneficiary designation at a very service level. And because my goal is to hopefully give you some general overview what beneficiary designation is and how you will be preparing for this when you go through your estate planning with either attorneys at our firm or with all the other attorneys. So yeah, the reason why beneficiary designation is important because it's usually related to your planning, and a lot of people come to an attorney for estate planning primarily focusing on a will or a revocable living trust only, but beneficiary designation is actually a very, very important tool for a lot of people in the modern days, given the assets portfolio that people own. So a beneficiary designation, essentially it's a tool or if it's a piece of paper, it's where that you can put down your, intended beneficiaries in order by percentage, things like that. If you have, accounts with financial institutions nowadays, you probably all do so online directly, and you probably have done so already. So when we talk about beneficiary designation, there are a concept of non-probate assets that I would like to talk about. Assets overall can be divided into two parts, probate assets and non-probate assets. So probate assets in general, eventually when a person passes away, probate assets will pretty much go through the probate legal process, to eventually be distributed to the intended beneficiary. Non-probate assets, on the other hand, don't need to go through probate, and they can be distributed through many, many different ways. And beneficiary designation is one of the many ways for a non-probate asset to be distributed. So when we talk about beneficiary designation, let's apply our everyday life examples to here. So maybe it's easier to comprehend and understand. Then primarily we're talking about retirement accounts. So you probably have 401k or individual retirement accounts. You may have one, you may have multiple, and you may have multiple with different financial institutions. It's pretty common for people, working in the modern days. And another asset that we're talking about, when we think about beneficiary designation, we're thinking about life insurance policies. Not everybody has it, but it's a very common concept to a lot of people. Even if you don't have it, you probably heard of it already. So when you go ahead and buy, purchase a life insurance policy, your representative from the company probably will already guide you through, already guided you through to fill out your beneficiary designations. Lastly, we will be talking about pension. And pensions are not as common nowadays, but still from time to time, people still, having pensions. So overall, in sum, when we are talking about beneficiary designations, I want you to immediately, think about all these three assets and think about whether you have those three assets, whether you have retirement accounts, whether you have life insurance policies, and whether you have pensions. The reason why we should think about it is that, as I mentioned earlier, they are non-probate assets. So for probate assets, they will be going through probate when people come to do the planning. When we start drafting up a will primarily help distribute the probate assets. Non-probate assets usually won't be distributed through the terms in a will. They will be distributed based on their own mechanism, own tool, which is beneficiary designation. That's why when you go to an attorney for planning, when you're thinking about the details, how to customize the distributions in your will, you probably want to think about how you would like to designate beneficiaries for all these three types of assets to make sure that your planning is consistent with your intent. And that's why beneficiary designation is also important. It's not part of a will, but it's important as it's an important part of your entire planning. So what should I do at a general level? I think number one, it's always important whenever you would like to do a planning, you always want to understand your own assets portfolio. You want to know what kind of assets you own. Maybe I have one house or two houses, or maybe I have one retirement account or multiple retirement accounts. This is something that you would like to know, and you would like to gather the approximate value of each asset that you own so as to discuss completely with your attorney to to proceed with effective planning. Second, you want to work with an experienced attorney to facilitate a comprehensive planning. So generally speaking, an attorney will discuss the assets with you and try to strategize a planning with you, based on what kind of assets you own and how much, what the value each assets carry. Then the attorney generally will provide you with several plans or options and to discuss the pros and cons with you. Sometimes you might also need to work with a CPA or accountant during the planning process, depending on the size of your estate. And maybe we need to consider more about estate tax planning or things like that. Or, when you have a retirement account, how should we designate a beneficiary? What type of designation will gives us the most tax advantage, things like that. So this is why sometimes planning is not just between you and an attorney, but a CPA or an accountant sometimes will be included into the conversation. And lastly, you probably want to double check your intended distributions for all assets so that to make sure that everything is consistent with your intent, as I mentioned earlier, right? Because probate assets in general will be distributed based on the terms in your will. An attorney will help you to, draft up and complete the content of the will. On the other hand, if you have retirement accounts, life insurance, or pensions, those assets will be distributed based on the beneficiary designation. Outside of the will, in the most situations, there are always exceptions, but in a regular situation, they will be distributed in parallel. So that's why you want to make sure everything is consistent and all assets are considered. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, where today's topic is will be discussed, addressed to you at a very service level. And my goal is to give you a general idea that, okay, when you go to an attorney, when you are ready to do your planning, what you should be thinking about, your assets, and you will be equipped with the basic knowledge to divide up like what is probate assets, what are probate assets, and what are non-probate assets, so as for you to have effective and productive conversations with your own attorney. So if you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us, and I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Thank you.